Hi there guys and girls, Matt here with Grab the Go Bag. We're on video 3 of the NREMT exam prep process, and we're going to be talking about the series of questions and how they're designed here, just for a little bit better understanding of this exam, which seems to be much more difficult than most exams people have done in the past. So we're going to walk our way through this. Again, this is the adaptive exams focused on question series. So there's basically 2 ways to do adaptive exams. We could ask you one question at a time, and then based on your answer, we could make the questions more difficult or more easy based on immediate evaluation. So that's one way to do things, okay? There's another way to do things, and it's called a series of questions. And so that would look a little bit more like this. We would ask a series of questions. In this case, it's 3. And then we would decide as a group how you did and move your difficulty up or down accordingly, okay? Now we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail so we can fully understand. So there's a table here. This table looks really confusing, but don't worry, we're going to break it down real simple. Across the top, you see 1, 1, 1, 2, and 1, 3. So the second number there refers to the question of the series. There's going to be 3 questions in each series here, all right? Because there's a 1 next to each one, this is all series 1, all right? And you're going to understand as we go on through here. Now, on the left side, we have the 5 categories of the test represented. A would be airway, ventilation, respiration. C would be cardiology and resuscitation. T would be trauma. M would be medical as well as OBGYN. And O would be EMS operations. So this looks like a lot of stuff. It is. There's actually 5 mini exams going on at one time, 1 for each category of knowledge. So we're just going to focus in on airway because it makes things much easier. We're just going to look at one row at a time, just a simple series of 3 questions. Okay. Now, let's say if we're evaluating airway, that the requirement to pass airway is a Bloom's level 4. Remember we talked about Bloom's in a previous video. So a level 4 is required to pass airway, all right? That means when we first start the exam, it's not going to give us a level 4. It's going to give us something easier. Let's just say arbitrarily the first 3 questions now, this first series might be a level 2. Okay, just to kind of get us off the ground and see how we're performing from the beginning of the test, all right? So we would put a 2 there, and we would say this series of questions, this first series is going to be Bloom's level 2. So we've got 3 questions in here, okay? And we're going to see how we answer those 3 questions, and then we're going to figure out what to do next. So the first question we got right, the second question we got wrong, third question we got right. Now we won't know this, but the back end of the exam is keeping track of all this as we're answering these questions. So the next thing that we have to do is decide what to do, where to go from here. So we got 2 of those right and 1 of those wrong, and the test is going to weigh that out. It's going to say we actually got most of that series correct, and we were tested once again at level 2, so we got most of level 2 correct. So what it's going to decide to do is set your rating to the level you passed, which we just passed a level 2, and we're going to make a note in there that we can go up a difficulty on the next series. We're going to go up 1. And our next series would then be the next most difficult level of Bloom's. Okay? So after the series is complete, the process repeats. This happens over and over again. And again, we're not just looking at airway. We're looking at that for easy understanding. And that's not the only category progressing. There's actually all 5 going at once. So instead of getting 3 airway questions in a row, you're actually going to get a scattering of all sorts of questions that feel like they're very random, and they're going to bounce all over the place. But on the back end, the test software is keeping track of 3 airway questions lumped together in this particular example that we're giving here, okay? So let's take a look at that. Remember, we just answered those questions. We got our rating, and we got whether we could increase or decrease difficulty. We're going to see how that affects our next series of questions. Again, just isolating the airway category, all right, for simplicity of understanding. So you're going to see that we tried a level 2, and we got a rating of 2+, and that's going to mean that we can now make the next series more difficult. So we're going to make that a Bloom's level 3 series. Those questions are all going to be a little bit harder. And we're going to go through that process again. Okay, so you're going to see that we got the first question right, the second question right, the third question right, and we're going to say that because we tried a level 3 and we got those questions right, that we're now rated at a level 3. We're also going to increase our difficulty. So the very next series is going to be even more difficult than this one. And this is how we would progress through the test. Okay. Now, what if you answer most of the series wrong? Well, that's a great question. The last example we used, we answered things mostly correct, so we were allowed to progress and move up. Now, if you answer them wrong, kind of the same thing happens. For example, we try a level 2 series, and we get the first question right, the second question wrong, third question wrong. That means overall, when the test software starts to weigh how we did overall, it's going to say you got most of those wrong, so you actually didn't show that you were good at level 2. All right, and this is represented by that graphic there. So what's going to happen is now we're going to get bumped down. Our rating will be lower than the level we failed. So we can't be rated level 2 because we failed that level. So we're going to get a 1, and we're going to get a note there that says we need to make the next series easier. Okay, it's going to decrease the difficulty of the next series. So we're going to see that play out here again, going through our second series of questions. Remember, this time we didn't do so well. So we're going to look here. We tried a level 2. We didn't accomplish that. We're going to bump down one level. We're going to now have a level 1 attempt. Okay, and we're going to get 3 questions at level 1. And these are real easy questions. So let's say we do really well on these. And this means we tried level 1. We're going to get rated level 1 because we passed that level, and we're going to get an indication that we can make it harder again. Now, there is kind of the obvious danger to this. If you do this too much, you're going to waste a lot of questions on your exam. You only get so many questions to try and prove your competence. So as you do that, if you do too much back and forth, not doing well on a category and then getting it bumped down and then doing well on that, getting bumped back up, if you keep going up and down instead of just smoothly progressing upward, you're going to have issues running out of the questions available on your exam. All right, and that's going to come in the next video when we start talking about different exam scenarios. All right, now what you're seeing overall is a progression like this. Okay, first question, you get it right. Second question, you get it right. Third question, you get it right. Now, the software decides you got most of those right, actually got all of them right. So it's going to make your next series of questions a little bit harder. Okay, that's your series 1. It's going to make the next series a little bit harder, and it's going to bump up that difficulty, and you're going to get another string of questions. Okay, and as you can see here, this next series of questions, because we got 1 wrong and 2 correct, we still did well overall. So again, it's going to decide to bump up the difficulty, and our next series would be even more difficult. Okay, that's the kind of progression you're seeing, and the reason it's done this way is to be able to really lock down what area you're on instead of going up and down, up and down, up and down all the time. It kind of gives you an average, and then it rates you on how you did average. Okay, so you can actually get quite a few questions wrong on your exam. As long as you're doing well, more than you're doing poorly, you're still going to progress through the exam. Okay, now this continues in each category. Remember, we just looked at airway to make it easy, but it's actually happening in all 5 categories at one time. The exam ends when you either meet the goal in each category, or the test software says it's actually impossible to meet the goal in each category. And again,